Okay, so before the video starts, I'm excluding movies and OVAs, but hopefully I can offer a more interesting list than the typical recycled shit you'll see online, because I swear those lists all have the same anime, just in different orders.
If everyone is not special, maybe you can't be what you want to be. So let's go.
This show is one I had trouble getting into, but it's bones at their best. Genuinely some of the most creative animation sequences ever, great choreography, well-written characters, and the comedy is damn near unmatched. Based off my MAL scores, it should be higher, but I couldn't find it in me to place it over anything else in the list. I guess there's nothing that made me constantly beg for more. But whenever I was actually watching the show, it had me hooked on everything. This is between me and you though. I originally had it in the honorable mentions section.
I just be my real, I just be my shine. 空に weather right.
Now this is a purely cute girls doing cute things show. The only thing is, tanks are known for being cute, of course. And although there technically are stakes involved, the most enjoyable parts are the over-the-top action sequences and cute girls. I was honestly surprised by the solid animation from a studio I've never heard of prior to watching the show. The 3D especially is somehow better than the 3D I've seen from other, much more well-known studios, and the characters aren't developed much, but there are so many, there's bound to be at least one you'll find likable. As for best girl, it's gotta be Anchovy. This show is ridiculously consistent across 5 entries in this series. With 3 seasons, 1 movie, and an OVA, I haven't given a single entry a score lower than an 8, with the last season getting a 9 from me. And I did say I was excluding movies and OVAs, but I thought it was worth mentioning. So this show does have some character development and growth, but I feel like the creators were trying to emphasize the simpler times as a form of relaxation, and they fucking nailed it. The characters are funny, the setting and soundtrack are extremely calming, and even better, it knows when to be quiet and allows certain scenes to speak for themselves. That goes for both punchlines and the more impactful scenes. Like when Renge is learning how to ride a bike. That entire thing is how you tell a story, by showing and not telling. I highly value that style of storytelling. So basically it takes a simple premise and executes it really well. And although the animation is decent at best, that's kind of where Slice of Life has an advantage. It doesn't need amazing animation, literally because it's a slice of life. Although the next show that's coming up, they kind of be doing the most. Yeah, KyoAni is literally the definition of doing the most. In a good way. So K-On! By all means should be higher, but the first season holds it back. I felt like the comedy was too repetitive, especially the joke of Mio being scared, and it was more of an issue of Mio's reactions rather than the joke itself, if that makes any sense. That aside, season 2 is not only consistently funny, it's probably the most I've laughed while watching an anime. That season is like the T-Pab of anime. You can literally say any episode is your favorite and I'm not questioning you. The way the girls play off of each other is so natural and helps to strengthen the idea that they are truly friends. The chemistry is strong and I haven't seen another friend group as well realized as K-On's. Even just talking about this makes me want to rewatch the fucking show. Then there's also the fact that it got me into anime. So yeah, I was a Dragon Ball Z, Naruto, One Piece watching normie, but the moment I finished K-On!, I told myself that I need to open my mind to new things, different genres, and that's something I still do. It's how I've discovered new hobbies and hidden gems as far as anime and video games go. Also, this is the first KyoAni show in this list, and I can't talk about a KyoAni show without talking about the animation. Their shit is always on point. I haven't seen a single anime from them that was lacking in animation, and I've watched a lot of their shows. Relatively speaking, every movement looks so natural with the perfect balance of weight, momentum, and subtlety. I don't mean to sound like a broken record because I did say this in one of my past videos, but I highly value the human touch when it comes to animation. Weight, momentum, impact, and, you know, again, subtlety. These are things that I personally look for in animation. I think being able to capture the human movements so well is really important to having solid character acting. There's another cute girl band on the anime blog that gets talked about quite a bit along with K-On!, but K-On!'s animation is much more natural and human-like. As I said, some of the sequences in Bocchi looked robotic and stiff, seemingly prioritizing smoothness over natural movements. And the more I looked at it, first of all, I ruled out that it wasn't 3D. It almost looks as if, this is gonna sound really dumb, but they first animated the scenes in 3D in that janky style of 3D that anime is known for, and then rotoscoped it so that it would still be 2D. But it ended up not mattering because it still looks fucking weird. And that just goes to show, it's not the dimension that's being animated. Does that even make sense? It's not an issue with 2D or 3D, it's the way the animation looks. 3D is not inherently janky, and 2D is not inherently natural, you know? If what you're tracing over looks unnatural, then guess what? The animation you're left with is also gonna look unnatural. And I've seen this in Free Run too recently, which is strange because clearly those animators know what they're doing, so I do find the use of rotoscope pretty, you know, this isn't a fucking video talking about rotoscope. But yeah, be warned, KyoAni's dick is gonna be in my mouth anytime I talk about one of their shows. They're the only studio whose anime I'll watch just cause they made it, and I trust their quality control. And yes, guess who Best Girl is? Yeah, it's Azusa. Or is it actually Mio? Ritsu's fucking hilarious though. And Mugi is especially cute and sweet. And on my 15th rewatch, I get the Yui appeal. But nah, it's Azusa. Azusa Best Girl. Taking a break from all this cute, fluffy shit. Vinland Saga is the newest addition to my list. It's funny, I thought the first season was barely an 8. But what I love about the second season is how it uses the first season as a launching point. Thorfinn's growth as a character is one of the most powerful and emotional journeys in anime and very similar to the main character of my #1 spot. And while I'm at it, the character development for every character was great too, especially since it's all happening alongside other characters. Everyone is going through their own shit and dealing with it at the same time. But for Thorfinn specifically, one of the themes he represents is redemption. It really resonated with me in how it was depicted. The scene where Thorfinn tells Arnate about Vinland just makes me cry like a bitch every time. And I think the idea of Vinland in Vinland Saga is kind of just genius, where there is no such thing as a nation without war, without fighting, without suffering. There's no such thing as that. But I think what Vinland represents is that hope, in that you should never kind of start reaching for that. Because Thorfinn forgot about Vinland, but now he remembers it. And now he's on this road to becoming a better and happier person. But going back to the Thorfinn telling Arnate about Vinland scene, in that scene, a track called Itself plays, and I can only describe it as warm, kind, and gentle. It's a perfect reflection of Thorfinn now. And I really don't cry that often when watching anime, like I was stone-faced while watching Your Name. But this shit is up there for the hardest I've cried while watching an anime. My only issue with Vinland Saga is the animation. The first season had awful 3D, while the second lacked consistency. In the Thorfinn vs Snake fight specifically, some of their movements looked a little too snappy and lacked, oh my fucking god, and lacked weight. But then you'll have moments like this. I guess that's what happens when you treat your production team like modern day slaves. Bullshit aside, the comedy is actually great. Especially for an anime that takes itself so seriously. I've been watching shit like Full Metal Alchemist, 2003 for the record, and The Elusive Samurai recently, and I can't stress how incredibly unfunny those shows are. It was getting to a point where I almost wanted to say the writers are talented at being unfunny, but it's more like they lacked any talent in comedy. If you're gonna write shit jokes, at least let it be so bad that it's funny, right? You know, like On the Room type shit. But there was just nothing. But yeah, my bitching aside, Vinland Saga is how you blend and balance Dramata? I'm on some shit tonight. Vinland Saga is how you blend and balance drama with comedy. Writers take note. This one is probably the most generic pick. It's nothing new, but it holds a special place in my heart due to the simplicity of the story and how unique it is. How many other animes have a soundtrack so heavy on hip-hop? Zero. I love hip-hop and I've always felt like it was underutilized in anime. This show features production from Force of Nature, Tsuchi, Fat John, and Nujabes, who's one of my favorite artists of all time. The fight scenes are amazing and still hold up extremely well because of the fun choreography. I think the way they depict the speed of two skilled fighters is actually really interesting, and it took me a while to notice. You know, I've seen fights in the newer hyped animes, the choreography simply doesn't land with me. And of course, there are exceptions to that, but for the most part, the choreography just is nothing to me. With that being said, I literally still rewatch Jin's fight against Karia every now and then. That shit's fucking beautiful. And considering the fact it was made in the early 2000s, it's aged extremely well and still remains one of the most unique animes out there. Dragon Maid Season 2 honestly caught me off guard. I loved the first season, but it was like, you know, that 9 out of 10 love. Then I watched the second season and was left extremely satisfied. I was initially worried about the new girl because I've noticed that characters that are brought in later in the story are trash, but Ilulu is fun, hilarious, and honestly, just really cute. Like listen, if Ilulu didn't show up in the show, if she didn't show up, we never would have got Kobayashi with a dick. And along with that, I got some more character development and some really wholesome moments between pairs like Kobayashi and Toru, Elma and Food, Fafnir and Takiya, and Lukowa and Shota. And considering the fact that this was the first show KyoAni put out after the fire, the animation was still up to their normal standards. It was fucking amazing. For some reason, I don't have this written down, but I want to talk about the fanservice-y, ecchi aspect of Dragon Maid. Yeah, it's there, but that's never been an inherently bad thing to me. Even though I could definitely do without it, I don't think it's bad. It is unfortunate that on the surface, it does look like just another generic ecchi comedy show, right? But when Dragon Maid decides to take itself seriously, it does a really good job of it. And for what it's worth, Elma is best girl. Also the soundtrack. My only issue with season 2, and probably what keeps it from being any higher, is when Elma has that little fight with Toru. It felt kind of forced. I think the actual climax of that moment was really well done. It needed more time. That's it. That's the one thing I can point out about it. Because from the first season, we knew that Elma had beef with Toru. It's just for so long that beef got set aside, and when it finally gets brought to the table, they didn't even warm it up or nothing. They just brought it straight out the fridge and just like, here. That's what it felt like. But again, besides that, Dragon Maid season 2 was fucking amazing. This is my favorite Iyashikei anime. Since Iyashikeis are supposed to relax the viewer, it doesn't get any better than watching cute fox girls go through these mini stories in every episode. But the characters lack in depth they make up for by all being fun to watch. Honestly, with 12 episode animes, I don't expect any sort of crazy levels of character development. The chemistry between Yuzu and Satsuki is great though, and I'm glad the writers didn't hold back with Satsuki's blunt and aggressive nature. Even against Yuzu, who's the sweetest girl in the show, she's a fucking savage. And even though I said this was an Iyashikei, I meant that in a practical way, because technically, it might not fit that description, because there is some tension in a few episodes, but even then, it's never anything too serious. And I really like how the mini stories are quick and to the point, which so far it's been a recurring theme that a lot of the animes on this list tend to not have any filler. The backgrounds are really nice to look at, while also perfectly depicting this fantasy world they live in, set to one of the best soundtracks in anime. It's unfortunate that this show has gone under the radar for so long, because I do feel like it does a really good job of executing the episodic fantasy idea really well. Like in terms of bringing new things to the table, it's not bringing much, but it's bringing old things to the table and it's doing it really well. Episode 8 in particular, I'm not going to show any of it, but I do want to talk about episode 8 just a little bit. Episode 8 in particular is a really emotional one. The twist is really nice, and it's just a sweet but also emotional little story, all kept within one episode. It's really fucking nice. Shirobako is formerly my favorite anime. It's one about realizing and fulfilling your dreams while also giving the viewer a good look into the animation industry. There's even a couple episodes that tackles the conflict over the use of 3D animation in a mostly 2D medium. And while every main character is amazingly written, I want to highlight Shizuka's story, because she's my favorite character, and best girl, and one that just makes the viewer respect her. She knows her friend Aoi can help her land a voice acting role, but chooses to carve that path on her own. She even tells her friend to not put her on. There are a couple times in her arc alone that just had me crying both tears of joy and tears of sadness. You know, because there's gonna be a lot of downs in her story before it goes up. And as good as the show is, the movie was disappointing. It felt like the same story, but I did say I was excluding movies, so just take that statement as me bitching. Otherwise, there really aren't any weak points with this show. So it was crazy to me that another anime from that one studio managed to top it. I was in shock. I was doing the YouTuber face. Violet Evergarden. Where the fuck do I even start with this one? Violet Evergarden is a short and highly effective anime about trauma, emotions, war, the power of words, and understanding. KyoAni pops off again with some of the best animation I've ever seen, and I've probably gone on record saying that only KyoAni can top themselves at this point. Of course, the title character is the highlight of the show. There's an insane amount of development and growth in just 13 episodes, and it all felt very natural, besides maybe 2 scenes that came off as a little too on the nose. But I kind of chalked that up to Violet kind of just being a robotic person, in a way. It's just something I'm pointing out, not necessarily a criticism of the show. And this isn't even including the movie, which I believe is somehow even better than the TV series. Watching Violet go from soldier to struggling with her past actions, to struggling with understanding emotions, to finally being a positive influence on others was an emotional journey accompanied by my favorite soundtrack ever. No, not ever. My favorite anime soundtrack. A fun fact, Free gets compared to the show quite a bit, and both happen to share the same composer. I could only kind of see why, but not really at the same time. From the 24 episodes I've watched, it's a very different story that feels much more fast-paced. You know, moving the cute elf girl aside, Violet is easily my favorite character ever, and one that I can't help but feel respect for, especially by the end of her story. And there's a great video I'll link in the description about a vet's reaction to the show. It really made me appreciate the show even more and solidified the trauma that Violet was dealing with. Now, bear with me for a second before I get to the honorable mentions. One of my favorite games ever is a short and effective 10-minute visual novel. How could a 10-minute game be one of my favorites? It's because it makes use of every single second. That's what KyoAni did with Violet. Every moment and every scene felt important. They didn't waste a single moment of the time they had, and definitely didn't waste mine. I've always been a bitch about valuing my time. Every second counts to me, and these animes made every second worth watching. But now I can start on the honorable mentions. These are shows I couldn't place in my top 10, but they're all special to me for one reason or another.
Water, earth, fire, air.
Starting with Avatar. Avatar is one of those shows I watched as a kid that I can still go back to and enjoy. I can't say that for a lot of shows, like Naruto. I love Avatar, and it's a great example of a show that both kids and adults can enjoy. Just like every other show, it has its flaws, but those flaws are nothing compared to the strengths of the show. I wanted to include it in the list, but there's the discussion of whether or not Avatar even is an anime. For what it's worth, I think it is. If you line up an image of Avatar next to another anime, I'm not questioning that shit. So if it was on the list, it'd be right above Dragon Maid. Also, Avatar is one of the many examples of great writing in a kid's show. Don't ever try to let people excuse poor writing by saying, it's for kids, bro.
Uncle, I know you must have mixed feelings about seeing me. But I want you to know, I am so sorry, Uncle. I am so sorry and ashamed of what I did. I don't know how I can ever make it up to you, but
Good morning, Miss Iwasawa.
Good morning, Miss Amaya.
なんだお前は。やめろ。来るな。
This one is a solid 10, and it's one of those shows you can finish in less than 30 minutes. It's cute, funny, and makes the most of its time, which is something I always rate highly. The thing I said before was off the script. This was on the script, so I just decided to repeat myself. Despite how short it is, I'd be bullshitting if I said I didn't miss the characters. They really do make that landing within those 30 minutes. It's just, those characters are so fun and enjoyable to watch, interacting with each other. Also, the art style and grounded style of voice acting is fucking S tier.
暑いクラスのマドンナ。
そんなやつ
そしてリーダー的な。じゃーん、私でした。
おーところで、お前なんだっけ？
先生、I am アマヤ。
Attack on Titan. I'm one of those people that didn't completely hate the ending. I didn't completely love it either. That being said, this is just the current peak of action anime. While Vinland Saga is an action anime, it doesn't really feel like one. And that's important, just because. So yeah, Attack on Titan, who the fuck says it like that? Attack on Titan. Am I saying that wrong? Attack on Titan made me ask questions about so many different things and answered them clearly and concisely. Eren's growth as a character, as a human, makes him one of my favorite MCs ever. And by MCs, I mean main characters, not rapper. He's definitely in that top 20 discussion. And it's not just Eren. Most of the characters are developed in an interesting and satisfying way, besides Mikasa, she's trash. I have 3 huge issues with the show, but the bottom line is it's an anime I'm glad I got to experience. Bonus points for not taking an eternity to wrap up.
どうして泣いてるの？
どんな時でも共に歩けるように重ねた心のまま僕らは前を向く
Tsurune is the best sports anime I've watched out of 6 total. That doesn't sound like a lot, but I've only rated one of those shows lower than an 8. It has a slow start and the main character is outshined by his friend, but season 2 is damn near perfect. And KyoAni does KyoAni shit, so some crazy ass animation is expected and they delivered. I wanted to include this one because it's one of the few rom-coms I find to be fun and interesting, along with flat out being a great show with a nice laid back art style. I want to say it's the best rom-com I've seen recently. I don't want to say all time because I feel like I might be forgetting something, but off the top of my head, I will say My Senpai is Annoying is definitely up there for one of the best rom-coms I've seen recently. Compared to other shows like Komi, Nagatoro, Uzaki, Tomo-chan, and The Dangers in My Heart, this one actually didn't annoy, bother, or bore me. I thought the characters were charming, funny, and meshed well with each other. My issue with most of the previously mentioned shows are the dog shit side characters that get way too much screen time. Those characters just weren't that interesting. Especially in Tomo. Okay, I know everyone likes Gundo for whatever the fucking reason. I don't know the reason. I didn't make it that far into the fucking manga because I got fucking bored. But I started reading it because I was like, oh, a cute tomboy that's trying to prove her love for her best friend. This sounds really cute. There's so much time I spent on her fucking friends that I didn't find to be interesting at all that I was just like, fuck this. They should change the title of the manga from Tomo-chan is a girl to Gundo is the actual main character. That's what should happen. I don't know why Tomo-chan is even considered the main character at this point. But At the same time, I might be unfair because I didn't read that much of it. But I stopped reading it because I started getting annoyed by the lack of focus. But fucking rant aside, I'm cutting this shit out. In My Senpai is Annoying, they usually only break away from the main characters to show the most interesting couple in the show, Kazuma and Saito. If you want a romance that doesn't take 10 years to develop, here it is. And that doesn't mean Futaba and Takeda fall behind either. Their romance isn't as developed because their side has a heavier focus on comedy, but it just moves a little slower than Kazuma and Saito's relationship. Also, Kazuma is fucking hilarious. Despite looking like generic anime protagonist, he's fucking hilarious. But yeah, I'm glad I finally got around to making this. Admittedly, I just got tired of seeing the same boring pics over and over, and that makes me sound like a contrarian, but I genuinely love all of these shows and could dedicate whole ass videos to each one. That being said, I hope it was at the very least an interesting list, if not agreeable. I'm considering doing one for anime movies later too, so I can surprise everyone with a valid Evergarden at number 1 again.
Say what?